Thank you very much indeed for joining us today, Dr. Gavin Ashton. And listening to that was David Greenwood, head of the Child Abuse Compensation Department at Switolski's Solicitors. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Sheila.
Your thoughts on what you heard there, and I presume you saw Welby over the weekend, or have read his words at least.
Yes, well, firstly, the chap that you've just had on is a churchman, a Catholic churchman, and he speaks in the same way that a lot of these Church of England types speak. It's as if they think they are above the law and do what they should do according to Scripture.
To be fair to him, I don't think that's what he was saying at all. We didn't touch on the law or all the safeguarding rules. We were talking more about why churchmen seem to get, at the very least, the tone of this wrong, let alone the response of it. He's never been responsible there for these issues. But, just to push back against that a little, if I may.
Well, every time I get to speak to these church people, they bring it back to Scripture and what would Jesus do and X, Y, and Z. I think what I want to say is that we live in a country that is under the rule of law. We should, first of all, obey the law, firstly. If you want to practice your religion, go away and do it. That's fine. But don't think that you are above the law. The problem is that the churches are unregulated. They don't have a regulator making sure that they take care of children properly. We don't have mandatory reporting yet. And so these churches have become places where abusers can hide. We've seen it time and time again, where when they found out, these abusers, that is, many are not found out, they are rehabilitated in subsequent years back into the church. And these are dangerous people. Yeah. We've seen it with Bishop Peter Ball, John Roberts in Liverpool, and David Tudor most recently in Chelmsford.
You touch on a really important point there about external regulation, because in schools and other bodies, the NHS, they will all need, just to use two, they would all need safeguarding approaches and safeguarding systems, but they are all heavily regulated and inspected organisations. It was surprising, wasn't it? That's the least word I could use for it. To even at the height of this drama that Justin Welby found himself in some months ago, he and others in the church still resisting any independent bodies involved in their safeguarding. And that just seems, it tells a story itself, doesn't it?
Yes, Sheila, I've been heavily involved in trying to persuade various senior members of the church to adopt independence in safeguarding, because, self-regulation just hasn't worked over decades. And we thought on the 11th of February, when the General Synod was about to have the opportunity to vote for it,
they voted against it.
That it would happen, but it didn't. They voted against it. I think it was actually down to, all sorts of petty internal politics there at the time. But it's not going to come back on the table for years now. And I hope that the government is now working on some way of regulating these unregulated organisations such as the church.
Do you think that despite the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse by Professor Alexis Jay and others as well, and other investigations as well, that there is still in this country, maybe other countries as well, but there's still in this country a kind of denial of the scale of child abuse that takes place, because, of course, vast majority taking place inside the home or within families where people know the perpetrator. But we still have a kind of silence around it, despite all the words on air, off air, on paper. There's still something of a silence around it, isn't there?
It's definitely not something that we talk about around the kitchen table, is it? There's such a stigma still attached to it, and having anyone in the family that's experienced something like this is full of stigma. There are plenty of places, plenty of support organisations out there if this has happened to you, and you can get some really good help nowadays. But yeah, you're right. There's enormous stigma and a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding as to how to approach it and how to, raise your hand if something like this has happened or if you suspect something like this is happening. Fortunately, the government is due to introduce a mandatory reporting as part of the criminal justice bill, I think it is, this year, which will make it
let's hope so.
Mandatory for people in teaching professions, that type of thing, to report these things to the police. Yeah,
people who have some degree, even a low degree of responsibility in their professional sphere. Thank you very much indeed, David. Good to talk to you. David Greenwood, Head of the Child Abuse Compensation Department at Switulski's Solicitors. Your calls in a moment. It's 3:21.